Lizzie. I am the marketing specialist. I see a few names that I recognize, so welcome. If you are not familiar with beYogi, we offer all-inclusive yoga liability insurance. If you're interested, check us out at beyogi.com. If you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to send them in the chat or the question feature, and we will make sure to get those answered, whether it's at the end of the webinar, in between, or even in our post-webinar blog that we will post tomorrow afternoon. Today, like we've mentioned, we have invited back Gunny Sodhi, excuse me if I said that wrong, for part 2 of an introduction to Ayurveda. Today, we are taking a deep dive into digestion. So Gunny's family roots in Ayurvedic medicine stretch across generations, but he didn't personally understand the power of Ayurveda until tragedy struck. We have Gunny right here, so I'll let him chat about that and kind of tell you why he found that passion. So Gunny, I'd love to hear about that, and feel free to jump into your presentation right after you answer that question.
No, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me once again. It's always a pleasure to be on here, and I love the audience because from what I remember last time, there was so much participation. So I adore being here. And in case there's some background noise, let me know. This is a new headset. When I ordered it, I didn't realize how big it was going to be. So I'm looking at myself on the camera now, but do let me know if there's background noise. I can fix that. So, but yeah, I grew up in a household with Ayurvedic physicians just kind of around me. My dad is one of the first Ayurvedic and naturopathic physicians in the United States. So he did his BAMS in India, and he came here and he realized that, well, Ayurveda is not a licensed form of medicine, so he can't technically practice within network. Within network meaning, you know, if people wanted to kind of also have insurance brought on or be billed properly, he realized that it was much more needed to get a proper license. But then he naturally gravitated toward naturopathic medicine. He did that from Bastyr University. And so from the very early age, I was a kid that was taking my lunch with me and prepared lunch, daily prepared lunch, like organic stuff, fruits, stressing that, hey, you need to know where your foods comes from. And, you know, I would see my friends who would be eating the pizza from the cafeteria and the chips. And I'll be honest with you, it looked good and it tasted good too, because, you know, sometimes you would get a little bored of the food that was kind of being prepared at home because you hadn't experienced the other stuff. But from that early of an age, I saw how important it was to understand and know the importance of your food. In Ayurveda, I have a really important quote and a really nice quote I want to share with you when the presentation starts. But yeah, I think that's kind of how it was rooted. And then moving on, it wasn't until 2006 with the passing of my brother that I truly experienced what Ayurveda and the power of understanding yourself is about, because that's when I had deep anxiety, depression, emotional just turbulence. I mean, like, you know, you name it, it was kind of off the gamut, like, you know, suicidal thoughts. I had to drop out of high school. But it wasn't until then that I truly realized all the stuff that I had learned when I was younger was now in front of me to implement and make the changes that I needed to. Today's talk doesn't focus on that particularly. It carries the experience I learned about it, but we're going to focus much more on digestion because, as you guys may have heard or the recent research is supporting, there is a huge gut-mind connection, meaning what you eat and digest has an immediate and almost kind of long-term effect on how you feel. And I want to get more into that. And so, you know, Lizzie, if you have any other, you know, questions, please feel free. Otherwise, I can kind of share my screen and go to the presentation.
No further questions right now. So I'd love for you to get started.
Absolutely. Let me share the screen and we can get started here. All right. Let me know when you guys can see this.
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. All right. So what I'd like to talk about today, guys, is Ayurvedic pillars for digestive health. And, you know, it's brought to you guys by YouVeda. YouVeda is a brand that we've created around Ayurveda. We'll get to that a little bit later. But let's kind of talk about, you know, it's interesting because when my assistant was like, hey, you need to update your bio, I'd never really written one for myself. So I just included some of the stuff that I felt maybe was possibly interesting. So that's me holding my little guy. His name is Arav. What's interesting is this month we have another one on the way. and it's going to be a baby girl. So, we are expecting a baby girl that's going to be happening in a couple of weeks. It's a crazy important time, and we're excited. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of YouVeda. I'm also the host of the Balance Being podcast. I've been on other podcasts. Maybe you guys have heard of some of the names: is Sahara Rose, Shaman Durek, Rosie, Almost 30, Elena Brower, and My Seven Chakras. I'm extremely passionate about Ayurveda with my background, with my father being a physician. I'm being exposed to the, him kind of the transformation he sees in people, and then also around the business side of it with creating some of the highest and best quality supplements. I also, from my transformation and my experience from being in that deep state I was talking about earlier to being able to naturally lift myself out of it. And then within a short period of time, I became passionate about being a mind body wellness coach and guide to others who needed the help. Our vision here is to create a healthier, happier world using the intelligence of Mother Nature. And my personal mission is to help as many people as I can through kind of what I learned and what I implemented. One of my fortes, like I said, is Mind Body Wellness Guide, because I think in Ayurveda, when you make a decision in the mind, the body follows. And we can talk about that a little bit later. In my free time, I love to spend time with my family and be in nature. So let's get kind of into it. I think for the people that are new here, I wanted to get into what is Ayurveda. It's interesting because if you go back maybe 5 to 10 years when I would be attending some trade shows with the team, with my father, with his team, people would have no clue what Ayurveda is, let alone be able to say it. They would know about some of the ingredients like turmeric and ashwagandha and other things. But now I saw the other day, my wife gave me, we're Costco members, and she showed me the back of the Costco pamphlet. And this is prime real estate. I mean, this was going to all their members. It had turmeric and ashwagandha. And I was just telling her, I'm like, oh my God, like this has come such a long way. People are recognizing mainstream these herbs that have been around in Ayurveda for centuries. So that's interesting to see to me now that more and more people are learning about Ayurveda and getting, kind of accustomed to at least wanting to find out what it is. But for this talk, I wanted to focus on the really important aspect of diet. And I love this quote. It's an Ayurvedic proverb that is absolutely one of my favorites. It says, when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When diet is right, medicine is of no need. Think about that. That goes into the whole thing about food is thy medicine. And it's so, so true. Most of the time when I've seen my dad start diagnosing people, and when whatever he did for me, for my protocol, and even I've done for others, is you start with the mind, of course, because like I said, when you start with the mind, the body follows, but then you also get into the diet. What are you eating? When are you eating? How are you eating? And those are some of the things that I want to get into here later. Basically, what Ayurveda is, it's a 5,000-year-old science with its roots in India. Some people think it's older than that, but that's where the text can be kind of traced back. It has been documented to that. And it's interesting, when you open up the word Ayurveda, Ayu is literally life and Veda is science. So basically what we're talking about is a life science. It's kind of a how-to of how to live. And the goal here is not to have you guys be doing, it's interesting because sometimes when I hear about Ayurveda, it's like, okay, do you have to meditate for hours? Do I have to become this person? Do I have to go in the cave and do this? Do I have to become 100% vegetarian? Do I have to do this? My question to you guys is no. My opinion and my perspective of Ayurveda is fully understanding the body and to promote consistent balance between the mind, body, and spirit. That's literally what it's about. It's that balance of what is internal is external, what is external is internal. And how do we keep that balance consistent so you get to live a thriving, happy, healthy life for many years to come? Now, when we get into that, there's 5 basic elements that Ayurveda talks about. Ether. Ether is space, the space around us, the air, the water, fire, and earth. These are the 5 basic elements that make us up. And these are present in nature as well as they are present in us as well. These 5 elements come together to make up the constitutions. And I wanted to talk about the constitutions because I want to talk about diet specific to the constitutions. Now, in order to fully understand the constitutions and to kind of understand, are you a Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, there is tests available online, but I'll tell you basically kind of how you can understand. Vata is ether and air, Pitta is fire and water, Kapha is water and earth. For Vatas are super creative types. They're creative. They're go-getters. They're ones that you mostly see in the creative realm. They are also entrepreneurs and dancers and musicians, but these are the people that really like to be creative. For Pittas, it's much more, they're fiery, they're go-getters. They also tend to burn out a lot. A lot of entrepreneurs have this. People that hold higher like positions of that they got to lead and they got to manage a lot of people. That's a lot of Pittas. Kaphas are much more earthy. They're laid back. They're kind of much more calm. And these are the people that when taking decisions, they sometimes tend to procrastinate just because they're much more mellow. So those are the personality traits. I'll get more into kind of how does digestion impact each of those constitutions, but those are kind of a very high level, and I'm going to make a disclaimer, very high level descriptions of the constitutions. And I also want to say that whatever I'm about to share, it's not any I would say it's purely my advice from my own experience. It's not medical advice. We have people in our network. If you want to look for a proper practitioner or a doctor, we can outline that and have you guys go to it. But in no way should this be taken for medical advice. We want to make sure you guys go to the right person, and we have that network in case you need it. So moving on, digestive health and Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, digestion is made up of Agni. What is Agni? Well, quote unquote, it's actually your digestive fire. It's super important because it's very important as our health and well-being depends on our ability to digest our food. Our Agni is how well, how quickly, how efficiently we are able to take our food and digest it. And in Ayurveda, the goal is to make sure the Agni, it helps us break down the foods and other things we adjust. And it's able to break down the things that we need and provide the nutrition. But then also, is the Agni strong enough to take it and eliminate the waste that we don't need? So two things. The Agni is super important to make sure that we have the digestive ability to be able to provide the nutrition the food needs into our body. But then also eliminate what we don't need, because some food is the food that we consume. Some of it is also used for nutritional purposes to give us the energy, and then other stuff is naturally provided as waste. Now, when you understand Agni, and you understand that the goal of Ayurveda is to have your Agni being fired off at the most optimal level, because that's what will help your immune system. That's what will help you feel good, that whole mind-gut connection. That's what will help you have regular bowel movements. That's what will help you digest your food. That is the goal. And how do you know you're possibly off? Well, signs digestion is off is many things that I'm sure many of us have all experienced. I've experienced these: bloating, gas, GI issues, weight loss, mood issues, weakened immune system. It's so interesting nowadays, and it's encouraging that more and more people are talking about, and official studies, and I've quoted these from Harvard, John Hopkins, about the important mind-gut connection and how, if you don't pay attention to that, anxiety is especially caused by the foods that we eat, and you can point to that very specifically. So that is super interesting to me, because once that was kind of out there and published, I got very excited, because I said, look, this is something that Ayurveda has been talking about for centuries, and now there's actually studies and scientific reasoning behind it, behind the whole mind gut. And that for me is kind of just honoring how old and traditional Ayurveda is, but also the intelligence that was back there. So now I'd like to kind of get into digestive health and the specific constitutions. Like I said, Vata is a combination of ether and air, and these are much more of the creative types. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk to you guys about what happens in a Vata intestine, and then what happens when it's a balance. So in highly sensitive Vata body types, the individual also has a very strong radar and feels everything. Vatas are very intuitive people. What that means is when they have a strong radar and feel everything, is they intuitively know the food that they're consuming is either helping them or not. It's either, if you consume something and you begin to notice something in your stomach or possibly an allergic reaction, this is something that can really, from the start, from the get-go, you should be aware of it, because that is a radar telling you that the food is either accepted or not accepted. These are also Vata types easily overstimulate the intestinal skin and alter the good bacteria and neurotransmitter production. This results in sluggish, slow, dry, hard elimination and mood-related and sleep concerns. Vatas typically, when they encounter an intestine that's not in balance, is that their digestion gets sluggish, slow, dry, and hard, and really become to get more constipated and have a hard time in having that regular, healthy bowel movement, the one that is much more fibery, and it almost becomes painful to a point. And this in turn affects the mood and also sleep because, like I said, part of the Agni's responsibility is to give us what's important in the form of nutrition, but then also help us eliminate. So how can you do this now? Well, Vata balancing starts with helping to soothe the nervous system, okay? Lubricate the intestinal skin and support new population of intestinal microbiomes. Ghee is wonderful. For you guys that don't know what ghee is, you guys can pick it up. It's at mostly, you know, I've seen it at Whole Foods, local Indian stores, even on Amazon. It's a wonderful butter type of texture. It's something I'd say, you know, describe it as that. But basically what ghee does is it's one of those naturally occurring foods that it provides a lubrication to the intestinal skin. So much more of the intestines don't get blocked, but there's much more of a smooth passage for the Agni to get similar to the support. Then I also love supportive herbs. Triphala. Triphala is a combination of 3 fruits, Amla, Bahera, Guduchi. What is amazing about Triphala is just like ashwagandha is an adaptogen for the mind, I like to say, Triphala is an adaptogen for the gut. An adaptogen is basically something that helps a body adapt to stress. And Triphala does it for digestive health. It helps regulate regular bowel movements. If you're constipated, it can help you get rid of that. If you have diarrhea, it can also help bring it back into balance. Triphala is excellent. I also like guduchi, licorice, turmeric to reboot the bowel function through a more lubricated and less inflamed intestinal tract. Now, the thing with turmeric is many of us don't realize that sometimes the foods that we eat can cause a lot of inflammation in the gut. And when that happens, it throws off the healthy bacteria. It throws off the regular digestion, which is why turmeric and curcumin are so important for healthy kind of digestion and microflora. And we have a product that's called My Healthy Digestion. And My Healthy Mood, again, for the mind-gut connection. My Healthy Digestion contains many of the herbs with Triphala, a probiotic, and enzyme, really a comprehensive blend that truly helps, really support the regularity. It puts the good bacteria in the system. It helps break down the food with the enzymes, and then also has Triphala and other Ayurvedic herbs to continue to support your body to getting into balance. Now, getting into the digestive health, Pitta. Pitta is an interesting constitution because for me, Pitta is again, it's that fiery element. It's one of those things that you kind of want to be careful about what you consume. Fire and water combination, as I said, people that have Pitta can occasionally have heartburn and reactive production of the mucus that can. This is interesting because it's the opposite. Instead of dry, it's loose stool and abdominal comfort. It's often seen in people rushing the mind and body too hard, basically close to exhaustion, is a characteristic of Pitta. The overdriven person who's eating on the go, not really being mindful of their food, ignoring the heartburn, eating out, continuing to go, pushing the body beyond its limit is the signs and characteristics of Pitta. How do we get it back to balance? Well, Pitta balancing. Focus on cooling foods, supportive herbs such as amla and guduchi to cool and strengthen the digestive fire. The goal is to reboot the digestive system. And I'm going to get into more specifics kind of on how to do it, but these are from kind of the dosha constitution. Again, My Healthy Digestion is wonderful. It has these cooling herbs in it. The essential oil is also wonderful. It has fennel in it, which also cools and lubricates. And that's how you see, the interesting thing is many of these Ayurvedic herbs also work in conjunction. And when you work in conjunction, it's naturally going to produce that balancing effect. So again, Vatas get that really dry stool, and then Pittas can have that loose stool and abdominal discomfort, and it's associated with fire. Let's now get into digestive health for Kapha. Kapha, like I said, is the water and earth combination. It's slow, kind of the boggy digestive system. You really got to kickstart it. And that has to do with just the characteristic of Kapha. Like I said, much more laid back. But what's interesting is it's a production of excessive mucus. And we see a lot of this happening when people come out of the winter season into the spring season. A lot of that mucus begins to drain because it's been stored up in the winter season, not just for kaphas, but for many other people. But kaphas get it a lot more because the mucus buildup happens. Their digestion is naturally going to be slow when certain things are not done to promote the balance. So when those things are done, the mucus builds up. A lot of it kind of they get the clogginess, they get the allergies. More of it is called the toxins in Ayurveda. It's called ama. More of the ama is produced. So what we really need to do here, and like I said, prevent the intestines and microbes from assimilating. It needs the nutrients to detoxify the intestinal walls. And so that is what we need to do for kapha, is focus on the removal of the mucus. Kaphas get a lot of mucus. I mean, I used to have this as well. My mucus buildup would be a lot. It would be associated with allergies, and it would be associated with when I would go from one season to the other. I started taking different herbs, change up my diet, and it really helped me. Turmeric is awesome because it does dry unwanted intestinal tract material. And again, the YouVeda, My Healthy Digestion, is wonderful. It does contain turmeric in it. It contains triphala as well. But for kapha, it's much more we want to focus on controlling the mucus, which really helps in controlling that optimal digestion. So kind of coming out of the constitutions, what are some other things that we can do to really help out? And this is where we need to go within, be aligned, and be intuitive. And what I mean by that is, see, what's interesting is each of us has this radar in our bodies that is super, super, super intuitive. Our bodies are constantly delivering messages to us on a consistent basis, especially around food. And it's around the food that we eat, when we eat it, and how we feel. It's up to us if we want to take the time to actually interpret that message. Some of the things that I would like us to do and kind of have tips on is ways to improve digestion is meditate on a regular basis. Meditation, like I said, there's a gut-mind connection. When the mind is calm, when the mind is free of that unneeded stress, the rest of the system also begins to kind of have that parasympathetic system begin. It helps your digestion, it helps your immunity, and I think there's so many things that you guys probably know. Everyone's really, I'm assuming, has experienced meditation or wants to do it, but meditation is amazing and it can extremely help gut health as well. Take short walks after your meal and truly be in the present moment. What's super important about this is I believe that even when I was little, my dad would do this. We had a little park by his office. After we'd eat, instead of going right back into working and right back into, kind of sitting, we take a little leisurely walk. You're not running, you're taking a little leisurely walk and being fully present and just taking in your surrounding. What that does is it reminds your mind, it reminds your body that you are in tune with nature. And it sends a subconscious message that, wow, okay, I'm here. I'm not focused on, I just enjoyed a beautiful meal. And it's time for me to kind of just let this meal do its thing, provide the nutrition. And honestly, it's much more healthier than just going back and sitting. That movement, little bit of movement is needed. I like to take even short walks after dinner, but if you can get away with taking one short walk, try to do it at lunch, and I'll tell you why at lunch. Try not to overeat. Like I said earlier, your body tells you when you are full. Listen to your body's intelligence. And what's interesting is when you become more intuitive, when you begin to do more meditation, you know how much food your body needs. And it's different for everybody, but you begin to know that because you become more intuitive with it. This is a super interesting one. I really want you guys to make a note. If anything you guys get out of this talk, make a note of this. Eat your largest meal at lunchtime. This is when your digestive fire, the Agni, as I mentioned, is the highest. It's the highest, between noon and 2, 12 and 2. And I'll tell you why. Your digestive fire works with the sun's clock. As the sun progresses throughout the day, guess what time it is the highest? Between 12 and noon. And that is how your digestive fire works. It works with the time that the sun's the highest. So when it becomes in alignment with the highest time of the sun, your digestive fire, that is the best time to eat your largest meal. When should you eat your lightest meal? closer to dinner time, because again, it's working with the sun's clock, the sun's going down, your body's naturally getting ready to get into slumber, to get into sleep, to get into rest. And that is also when your cortisol levels naturally begin to drop. So this is one of the tips that I've instituted in my life. It's been a game changer for me. I do eat my heaviest meal at lunchtime. I do try to watch that time. That 12 to 2 is a sweet window. Honestly, you can kind of get away with eating and indulging in some of the foods in this time as well. When you have your heaviest meal at dinner time, you will have a hard time falling asleep. Well, sometimes, I mean, depending on how heavy it is, but it won't be, you will most likely be gaining weight. You'll have a hard time getting up the next morning just because that's going against the Ayurvedic clock. Try to avoid eating when you are engulfed with negative emotions. I think all of us may have experienced this, but when you're doing that, you are feeding a subconscious or psychological habit that truly is not helping with getting the food in there, and it's not forming a good relationship with the food as well. Food is to be nutritious. It can be emotionally, satisfying, but if you're eating when you have negative emotions, it's not good because it doesn't align with the consciousness, and it just will not be as nutritious as you want it to be internally going in. Express gratitude for your meal before, during, and after. Just think about this exercise for a little bit. Imagine how lucky and grateful we are that for most of us, we have the ability to go in to our houses, restaurants, wherever we are, eat at whatever time we want. Imagine where the food comes from that delivers to our plate, and just express gratitude. I'll tell you guys, when you do that kind of exercise, when you do that, your relationship with the food changes. It almost begins to, when you appreciate it, the healthy energy that you're giving it will also be served within. So just think about that.
Real quick, Gunny.
Yeah.
Super informative, and for me, I'm going to definitely use some of those tips that you said, like eating your biggest meal during around lunchtime. To go back to the Vata, Kapha, and Pitta, can you be multiple of the three? Okay.
Yeah, you can. Primarily, you are dominated by one constitution. You're most likely one constitution, but you're also a combination. But you can alternate between the three, and that's commonly something that is not clear. Like, you can be, like, naturally within the seasons, you should be in alignment with kind of what the season presents. Winter is much more of the Kapha season, right? Slowing down. Naturally, if you look at Mother Nature, what are most animals doing? Hibernating, right? And that's following the season. So we primarily, most of us are a one dominant dosha, but then we can be multiple doshas. Absolutely. That's a great question.
Yeah, gotcha. I was just curious because I have experienced, sometimes in one, sometimes in the other, depending. So I was just curious. But
But what's interesting is you'll still feel that the primary dosha that you are still constitutes a majority of the functions, like the foods you like, the certain things that go on mental, emotional for you, but you will go bounce in and out of the other doshas as well, but still governed primarily by your dominant dosha.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Another thing, guys, is always, and this my father says this all the time, is honor Mother Nature. You want to be eating fruits and vegetables that are in season, okay? If you guys know that your farmers, I would say go to your local farmers market and see the cycle. They're not going to have the same fruits available like some of the supermarkets do year round. If they're locally grown, locally picked, it's not possible, okay? Mother Nature yields the fruits that are in the season, and you want to eat that. Why? Because A, it'll have the most nutritious value. It's in season, it's in alignment, and it'll be super nutritious and healthy for you because that is the fruit that's being yielded. That's a vegetable that's being yielded in that season. That means it's being done as Mother Nature intends. In fact, that's how we do our herbs as well. All of our herbs that we get for our products are grown in the right geography and grown in season because that produces the best products. And that's super important. And not only are you supporting your local farmers market, but these foods are going to have a different energetic frequency to them as well. And you got to really ask yourself, is it truly possible in nature when seasons change, when things change, to have the same consistency of the food chain available to you year round? I like to eat within the mother nature cycles, and that's why I like to eat in-season fruits and vegetables. And it's good to occasionally change up your stuff, your stuff as well. Just it's good for the system. Try to incorporate all the taste in your meal. This will help you from grabbing that kind of, sweet snack afterwards or the sour. How you know you have truly picked a meal that's satisfying is it kind of satisfies all the tastes. You won't be craving something sweet, you won't be craving something sour. That's when you know you've truly satisfied kind of everything that you're feeling fully done, is that you've really incorporated and played to all the tastes. Eat as per your age and body constitution. Aim for freshly cooked and warm foods. The more you know about where your food came from, how it's cooked, the better. Just because, especially people that are very sensitive to have food allergies or other things, it's super important and super healthy for you guys to do that. Let me see here. I should have one more. Yeah. Go within, continuing. How much to eat? Beware of hunger and fullness cues. The rule of thumb here is to eat half of your capacity. 1/4 of your capacity for water. Sorry, 1 second, guys, here. 1/4 of your capacity for water, 1/4 of your capacity for air and optimal digestion. And signs of the right quantity of food is you feeling satisfied, you're not feeling heavy, you should be able to breathe, talk, and walk easily, and your senses become sharp. And those are some of the kind of the hunger and fullness cues. So I really apologize if you guys can hear my little one in the background. If you guys can, he was supposed to be in another room, and I guess he's made his way in the office. So I really apologize, but I'll continue. All of us are working from home, so I hope it's not too bothersome. So you really kind of, like, as I said, you really have to kind of listen to your body. And these are rule of thumbs that have been kind of created by an Ayurvedic doctor that I follow and a practitioner. Eat food to half your capacity. Think about it. 1/4 of the capacity should be for water, so the water can start doing the lubrication that's needed. 1/4 should be for air for optimal digestion, that ether, that element. And you've done a good job when you're feeling satisfied, you're not feeling heavy, you should be able to breathe, talk, and walk, and your senses become sharp. And all of us have had that experience when they've been able to eat and consume and feel amazing in the food that we go in. So that's something that's really helpful to kind of remember. So let me see here. I think that should be, that should be, so kind of, I'm at the last part of the talk here about digestion, and I can more than happy to open up the floor to questions if you guys had some.
Yeah, everyone, if you have a question about something personal that you're going through, feel free to add it in to the chat. We love the questions. Currently, we don't have too many, actually, because your PowerPoint has been super helpful. I've learned a lot, especially in this slide that we're looking at right now. You don't even think sometimes about saving room for air, for digestion, and making sure you're breathing enough while you're eating. So that's something that we all need to think more about, and especially just intuitive eating. It's a fad right now, but it's a great fad. Because, intuitive eating, intuitive thinking and feeling, when you're hungry, super important for your digestion.
Absolutely. And I also want to go on the record and say, look, I'm not saying to not be able to indulge and enjoy. It's, again, that balance is sure, have that food that you really enjoy. If you enjoy pizza, ice cream, go ahead and do it. But you got to also get in the habit of listening to your body. How much and how often is up to you. Everybody's different. But I'm not saying don't enjoy that food. Do it to a point where it's not going against your body. And when you know it's going against your body, you'll get cues: gas, bloating, skin issues, acne will show up, your moods may drop, your immune system will go down, you either be in a digestive state that's not producing the optimal bowel movement, or is producing loose stool. So you got to listen to your body, and that's, again, what Ayurveda is all about.
Yeah, one question that did come in about the eating your capacity for air. She asked, how do we eat, save room for the air? Are you supposed to breathe every bite? But kind of, do you have any tips for?
So what I like to do is, if you make these two, kind of put your hands together like this, almost like that, right? And try to eat 2 of those. If you can fit 2 of those on your plate, like you're eating right. That's kind of a general rule. And what it means by saving enough air, a fourth of capacity for air for optimal digestion, what that really means is eat enough of the food, but then in your digestive tract, you should have enough space for some of the air to be there too. You know, the whole thing about properly chewing your food, that when you do that, you're leaving space. When you're chewing, you're also leaving space, because when you're naturally chewing, oxygen is getting in there as well. So another really simple tip is make sure you try to chew properly. I've seen it myself, Lizzie, like literally 3 bites and I'm like, wait, what the heck, how did that go in already? Like, you need to give yourself a little bit more, because that is your saliva already. As soon as you put the food in your mouth, your saliva has intelligence enough where it's putting in the digestive enzymes are going to work to break down the food, but then more chewing is putting in more oxygen, is letting more of the lubrication go. So that's kind of a helpful tip for that.
Yeah, thank you. Another question came in. Sarah asked, how do you deal with feeding a family with different doshas?
That's a really good question. What I would say is, that's a very good question, actually. I mean, we have different doshas as well here. There are some primary things that you can do that almost every single dosha can go to. So, what I would suggest is, first and foremost, be aware of the season that you're entering into, okay? Because the most important thing is, even beyond the dosha part, is to understand and know what season you are going into. As long as you're bringing in-season fruits and vegetables, you are more than likely doing those doshas a favor, because most doshas respond well. It's like I said, in the summertime, we're going to be going to much more, we need cooling foods, and that's super helpful to pittas. It's also super helpful to kaphas and vatas as well. I would say for multiple constitutions, focus on really going and being in alignment with Mother Nature, and doing so, going to your local farmers market. I think that's super important. I wouldn't stress too much about, oh my God, this constitution, this constitution, this constitution. If you're being in alignment with this changing season and eating more local, I think you're going to be okay. And again, if those constitutions do have a specific food sensitivity, of course you got to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question that just came in. So this is from, excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Pooja. But he said, even after, or she said, even after eating light, I get feeling of bloating even. Is it because of my dosha? What can I do? So eating light still gets bloated.
Right. So a couple of questions I have after that is that what part of the meal? I mean, is that the breakfast? Is that lunch? Is that dinner? What time of day is that? Are you following the cues of trying to eat your heaviest meal then? When you get bloated, what are you doing right after your meal? Like, try to go for a walk. Another thing that you could do is try sipping on some warm water before, slightly sip on it during and after the meal. Try that. But one of the things that I would do is right after the meal, go for a nice walk, and don't do excessive breathing, do light breathing and see how that works. But without knowing what time of day you're eating that kind of the meal and you feel the bloating, I couldn't really answer that. Second thing I would also advise you to do is, if you haven't done already, go get a food allergy sensitivity test. That'll help you determine what you're sensitive to, what foods you need to avoid, and that'll really help you give like your own food DNA path of things that you need to do and you need to avoid, and then you can incorporate that. That's from a scientific point of view, but some of the cues that I'm saying is take a walk afterwards, make sure you're eating your heaviest meals as I advised, and also the sipping of the warm water is super critical as well, because that'll provide the lubrication, that'll kind of get the food moving as it needs to as well. And incorporating the herbs that was mentioned before as well. So it's really good.
Yeah, awesome. Before we continue with more questions, I did want to give YouVeda a bit of a plug here. So they have offered us 35% off your first purchase for all the registrants and attendees of this webinar. So you can go to YouVeda.com and the code is beYogi35 and use that at checkout. We'll add that in the chat just now. And we'll add that in any sort of communication we send you guys tomorrow and further, but just wanted to add that in there.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We did have another question about raw food. So how much raw food is okay to eat? I'm assuming salads and raw broccoli and
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I don't think there's raw. When I think of raw food, I'm much more got to be careful around the meats. I think the salads and everything. Make sure the families that you're eating of the vegetables. Again, I think you got to be intuitive. Just make sure and check how your body's reacting. There's certain leaves and certain greens that maybe you can react against it. How more importantly with the salads, I guess, to me is what are you putting on top of it? I always like to see if you can make your own dressings, if you can make sure that, sometimes we dump the ranch dressing and it has everything we don't want our salad to be about, right? And so see if you can prepare much more of, you can even use ghee. Ghee is a really good base to kind of sprinkle other things on there. Some natural black pepper for assimilation. Himalayan salt is good as well. But for raw, I'm much more cautious and concerned about if you're cooking with the meats rather than the vegetables, because that's when you really have to be careful. And traditionally in Ayurveda, by the way, meat is not like a no-no in Ayurveda. It had its purpose for medicine. For certain people that would get joint injuries, they would consume certain meats to really help with the lubrication and bone and joint health. So I'm not against whatever serves your purpose is good, but raw wise, I would say much more be careful about the meat, how it's cooked, how you're preparing it, the way it's cooked. So that's kind of how I'd answer that. Much more about the meats and other things that you should be careful about.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Question in general about so for everyone still on the webinar, we will be sending the PowerPoint to you guys so you can kind of get a more detailed look. But you mentioned that you could take a quiz or something like that to figure out what you are, Vata, Kapha, Pitta.
Yep.
Do you have a link that
Yeah, I do, Lizzie. You can actually go to the website. It's a website called joyfulbelly.com, and they have a wonderful quiz. We're also working on a quiz to kind of have that on YouVeda, but it's not in the works yet. I mean, we're still kind of doing the research on it, but joyfulbelly.com, and they have an awesome quiz to find out your constitution. It's much more specific, and yeah, Joyful Belly.
Awesome. Cool. Well, if you all attendees don't have any more questions, I feel like we could wrap this up. This was really awesome, Gunny. I really appreciate it. And we will be sending all of this wonderful education and information to you all. Remember, we will be posting a blog, so the webinar replay on our blog tomorrow. But definitely check out YouVeda, get that 35% off with code beYogi35. And if you want to learn more about beYogi, check us out at beYogi.com. Again, thanks, Gunny.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to leave with one more thing. If you guys, one more really key advice that I've done recently, and it's really awesome for you guys, is if you guys can try to, it'll help your digestion, it'll help metabolism, it'll help assimilation. Sip on warm water throughout the day. It doesn't have to be hot, but warm water throughout the day. It's more in tune with the temperature that your body sits at. The cold, ice cold water really disrupts that natural level of the temperature the body's at and causes issues with it can even cause inflammation. It can cause other things like that as well. So it's always better if you guys can, to maybe a simple habit, sip on warm water, room temperature water throughout the day. It'll help your digestion. One of those simple things that you can institute.